If you've been with us since Easter time, you know that I've been sharing with you a series I'm calling Learning from the Masters. And I have picked a wide variety of people that I consider to be either spiritual masters or masters of social change or masters of consciousness that I have turned to in the course of my life personally and ministerially for support and wisdom and for guidance. Of course, we looked at Jesus and we looked at Lao Tzu and we've looked at Buddha and Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and Mother Teresa. And today we're going to be looking at Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein. When I say his name, is there a picture of him that comes to your mind? Which one is it? Wild hair and what else? His tongue is out, right? That wild and crazy one. That man, besides being absolutely brilliant, absolutely a genius, was also funny. That was a picture that was taken of him on his 72nd birthday. I want to just share as we kind of go into today's message, which is all about thinking like a genius, that out of this mind was also this wonderful sense of playfulness and good humor. When asked to explain relativity in simple terms, Einstein joked, when you sit with a nice girl for 2 hours, you think it's only a minute. But when you sit on a hot stove for a minute, you think it's 2 hours. That's relativity. He was also self-deprecating. Once while pointing out equations on a blackboard, a graduate student noticed and mentioned a mistake. Einstein looked at the equation, rubbed his chin, and said, "You're right. You're right. Oh, well, I'm no Einstein." Or this last one. During a speech at Princeton, he quipped about his famously messy hair. "I suppose you think that if I know so much about gravity, why can't I get my hair to lie down?" You may or may not have known that he had a sense of humor, but I think one of the things that perhaps is true of the kinds of people that we're drawn to, the great thinkers and people who help to change the world or help to make life better for us, are people that are very broad, both in their thinking and in their way of experiencing life. You know, Einstein didn't just understand the universe, but he saw it through the eyes of a child as well, which I think is part of the magic, the ability to think with complexity, but also to look at life through the eyes of a child, through the eyes of a child that is curious, that is open, that is wondering, that is malleable. It's that kind of way of being, I think, that helps us to create for ourselves a magical and wonderful life, but also to be one that can inspire change for the better in the world around us. And so I want to share with you just a few of the themes that I pull from things I've read he said or he did that I think can help any one of us in living our lives in a better way, to think more like a genius. And the first has to do with imagination. Using our imagination more constructively than we have. And if you think you don't have an imagination, I would point you to considering this. When you are worrying about something, what are you doing? You're using your imagination, right? When I'm worrying about something, I'm using my imagination. I'm using my imagination to picture or think about the worst thing that could happen. The worst thing that can happen. I'm engaging my mind to hold a picture of or to think about something that has not yet taken physical form. To the extent, if you've ever thought or been told you're a good worrier, guess what? The flip side of that is you can be an amazing Imagineer, as they use the term in Disneyland, to use more constructively your power of imagination. Albert Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Think about that for a moment, from one of the most brilliant minds in recent history saying, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. He said the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. That's what that song was all about, right? To let the mind wander in infinite fields of possibility for yourself, for your children, for future generations, for our world, to let your mind wander in infinite fields of possibility. Remember the Alice in Wonderland book, the Alice in Wonderland story, the idea of thinking impossible thoughts before noontime? I dare say I think impossible thoughts before noontime. What was the Queen of Hearts trying to say to Alice? Use your what? Imagination. Use your imagination. It's the way we get beyond the borders of our own life right now. To realize that no matter how vast the borders are, that there is still what? Yet more on the other side. Yet more on the other side. Charles Fillmore, who was the co-founder of Unity along with his wife Myrtle, back in the late 1800s, he talked about the power of imagination. He said that imagination is the formative power of mind that shapes thoughts, that connects us with divine mind. If you've been a student of Unity for any length of time or depth of practice, you know that within Unity is this concept that each of us has 12 powers or 12 faculties. And this came out of Charles Fillmore's metaphysical, mystical look at the 12 disciples or 12 apostles that Jesus called to him to launch his ministry. Charles Fillmore believed that each of those disciples, each of those apostles, represented a certain quality or certain faculty or power that resides in each and every one of us. And one of those 12 powers, he said, was the power of imagination. The power of imagination. If you've ever been to the beautiful campus of Unity Village outside of Kansas City, Missouri, you are stepping into, in a way, it's like the Disneyland of Unity. You're stepping into the manifestation of pure imagination of our founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who believed that there was a different way of thinking, a different way of being in the world that could help people live a happier, healthier life for themselves and for others. It was through the power of imagination and the power of forgiveness, through the power of imagination that Myrtle Fillmore, who was diagnosed with tuberculosis in her mid-40s, was given 2 years to live. She used the power of imagination to visualize health and well-being for her body, to hold a different picture, to hold a different thought. She lived to be 86 years old. Would you say that her imagination worked? I think it worked very, very well. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere, anywhere. So Einstein tells us about the importance of imagination, but that alone is not enough. We use our imagination, and one of the other things he really, really emphasized was curiosity. Curiosity. To be curious. To be curious is to have very much an open mind. There's a beautiful concept in the Japanese culture. The word is shoshin. Shoshin. And it means beginner's mind. Beginner's mind. A beginner's mind is open to everything. A beginner's mind has nothing to unlearn. A beginner's mind is an open, clear slate. to approach your life, to approach a problem you have, to approach an opportunity you have with a part of you that at least is having a beginner's mind, meaning that you're not thinking about why it can't work. A beginner's mind, an open mind. Einstein said there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. To me, that gets at the heart of this idea of curiosity. I was thinking more deeply about curiosity this morning as I was driving in. And we have often heard people say, and I believe this is true, that rather than being afraid of something, one of the ways that we can move past the fear is to try to practice being curious. When we notice that we're afraid of something, maybe afraid of a change or afraid of a situation in our life, to be curious about it instead. And that might look like asking of ourselves when the fear comes up and we try to move into the realm of curiosity, to ask ourselves questions like, I wonder what I might learn from this. As soon as we ask a question like that, what begins to happen to the fear? I think it begins to shrink a little bit. I wonder what I might learn from this. I wonder what strength I might discover I have in myself that I never had to call upon before. I wonder, I'm curious. I'm curious about this fear. I'm curious instead of being judgmental. It's one of the quickest ways, I think, to snap ourselves out of being judgmental and critical about another person or another culture or another political party or another whatever's on the other side of where we are. Instead of being judgmental about it, to be curious. I wonder how they came to believe what they believe. That's a powerful question to ask. I wonder how they came to hold that opinion. I may not agree with it, but I wonder how they came to have it. What happens when we live in the space of curiosity is we will discover things we didn't know before. And the things that we discover that we didn't know before might change us. Might change us. Curious instead of pessimistic. Instead of what could go wrong, I wonder what could go right here. I wonder what the infinite universe, what God has in store here. Do you think any of those shifts might produce a better result? I think so. A much better result than fear or judgment or pessimism. Einstein also said the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It's the source of all true art and science. It's the curious person that can step into the mysterious, that doesn't shut down to it, but it's just, I wonder. I wonder. Few are those who see with their own eyes, he said, and feel with their own hearts. He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. When we are curious, our eyes are open. When we are curious, our ears are open. When we are curious, our heart is open. There's space for what? There's space for something new to come in. There's space for something new to come in. Another piece I think that is really clear in some of his writings and expressions is the importance of really using our minds, of really actively using our minds, and using them at a higher level of thought. It bothers me personally about myself how often I catch myself thinking the same thoughts over and over and over again. Do you ever do that? And it bothers me sometimes when I go, wait a minute, am I really thinking or am I just rehashing stuff? I remember Deepak Chopra once saying something, I think it was Deepak, once saying something to the effect that we wonder why our affirmations maybe don't work. And what we forget is we use an affirmation, or we're trying to change the mind with meditation or with visualization or imagination, but we do it so little in comparison to how often and deeply and long we have held the other thought. And that the problem is, the reason our life seems to keep being the same is we're doing the same stuff mentally in consciousness over and over and over again. It takes, I think, a great amount of deliberate attention and exercise to engage our minds, Einstein said no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. We know this to be true, right? Amen? Amen? We know this to be true. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So what is that telling us we must do? We must think a bigger thought. We must think broader, deeper, longer, wiser. We must question the thinking that we have been using that got us to where we are right now. And to not be afraid to let the mind wander and think into new territory. Just because we're thinking a new thought doesn't mean we have to act on it. But it's to try to stretch the mind, to think deliberately. He said, we shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humankind is to survive. Think about that in the context of our world stage right now. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive. Many of you in this room and online know that unity is part of a larger mindset, if you will, a larger, I don't like to use the word denomination, maybe trans-denominational, if you will, movement called New Thought that began in the late 1800s. And the very idea of the word or the name New Thought was to challenge us to have the audacity to think a new thought, to try to think originally. If you were to look at a problem that you have personally in your life right now, what would it look like if you challenged yourself to think radically differently about it? Radically differently about it. You just might find that there is an answer that you never would have thought of before. Einstein said as well, intellectuals solve problems. Geniuses prevent them. And he said the important thing is not to stop questioning. Not to stop questioning. The only book I have written is called Ask Yourself This. And it is nothing but a series of provocative questions to ask yourself in support of your soul's evolution, in support of your soul's journey, in support of your spiritual and personal growth. One of the things I deeply cherish about unity is our absolute belief in the wisdom inherent in every single person. That wisdom may be buried beneath trauma or erroneous thinking or negativity, but it is there. It is there because we are each an expression of the one mind, the one life, the divine mind, the divine life, the infinite life. Some call that God. Others call it other names. It doesn't care what we call it. We are connected to it. And within us is probably all the wisdom that our soul will ever need. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Not to stop questioning, to question yourself, and then to listen to the answers that come. Sometimes they surprise you. Have you ever gotten an answer in meditation that totally surprised you? Raise your hand or nod your head. A few of you have. Have you ever tried to resist it, or you're like, no, I don't want that. Anything but that. You know, it's so funny. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you certainly have. You know, pray for guidance, pray for wisdom, pray for understanding, and suddenly there's an answer. And I go, oh, but not that one. And then I'll go back and I'll ask the prayer again or sit for a while longer. No, not that. You really want me to do that? I don't want to do that. It's like, then why the heck did I ask the question? Was I really sincere in being deeply open to the guidance that would come? The important thing is to not stop questioning. This gives me great assurance. Einstein said, I think and think for months and years. 99 times the conclusion is false. The 100th time I get it right. That gives me some reassurance, right? And then the last that I would share with you, and there's so many more pieces here from Einstein, but one of the other things that I get from some of his teachings is the importance of going for elegant simplicity. Elegant simplicity. I remember years ago, and I can't remember why I learned this, but I remember years ago learning something interesting about sterling silver flatware. I might have been in like a fancy department store or something. I don't even know if people really use sterling silver flatware much anymore. But anyway, what I remember learning is I must have been in a store because the prices of the very, very, very simple sterling silver pieces was so much more expensive than the really ornate sterling silver pieces. And I am by nature a very curious person, and that made no sense to my mind. I thought it would be just the opposite, that something that was so intricate would be so much more expensive than the very, very simple, same weight, so it wasn't the weight of the metal. And what I was told is it's because you can hide the imperfections in the ornateness. You can't hide the imperfections in the simplicity. I've never forgotten that. I have one of those minds on some of those personality tests and things you take. I score very high in analytical thinking. And so, questioning and deep thought is kind of my, where I live. It's good sometimes, but it can also make things much more complicated than they need to be. And perhaps some of you notice that at times in yourself. Maybe through your overanalysis of something, you make something more difficult than it is. Or maybe in your overanalysis, in your over-questioning, in your overthinking, you fall into the realm of procrastination. You never get there to do whatever it is. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Einstein said, any fool can make things bigger, more complex, and more violent. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. He said, look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better. When the solution is simple, he said, God is answering. God always takes the simplest way. It's an interesting way of, an interesting thought, is it not? And so, in making this maybe a bit more personally practical and kind of tying this up a little bit, I think we can look into our own lives and we can look and see how can we enliven the quality of curiosity in our own lives. You might use like a notepad, a note application on your phone, or maybe you carry with you a little notepad, and you jot down maybe one thing every day that you're curious about, that you'd like to know something more about. Doesn't matter what it is, but what is it that you would like to know something more about that can stretch your mind a bit? Kind of like yoga for the mind, if you will. How can you stretch that mind, expand your thinking to be a little more curious? Or when you catch yourself in fear or judgment, to supplant that as best you can, even if only for a moment of time, to say, oh, I notice that I'm feeling afraid right now. Oh, I notice that I'm getting really judgy right now. Can I move into curiosity instead? Can I ask of myself, I wonder about this situation, instead of judging it or being afraid of it? And another then is this idea of finding the elegant simplicity. If you've got something going on in your life that feels really big right now, maybe a big change or a big opportunity, big problem, to step back a little bit and ask to be guided, to be shown if there is a simpler way to approach whatever it is. Maybe you're making it bigger than it really needs to be. What's the simplest solution right now? To just hold that. What I know to be true is when I genuinely ask a question of my deeper higher self, and I'm willing to let the answer come, not trying to use my own thinking to get there, but to let the answer fall into consciousness, it's always right. It's always right. Doesn't always mean I like it. Doesn't always mean I want it. Doesn't always mean I accept it right away. But if I ask it sincerely and genuinely, something will come. And I think it's a gift. God bless. Namaste.